What's up, family and friends? This is Sonny with Poteet Homes, your favorite, bringing you another episode of some excellent content, and we'll get started right into this 2023 real estate season. All right, guys. So today we're going to talk to you guys about the pros and cons about buying versus renting. You know, I haven't touched on this very much. This episode is going to be very helpful for you that are kind of in that midpoint range where you're saving some money and maybe you don't have enough for a down payment, or maybe you're just not educated all the way through about renting versus buying. So I want to help you kind of come up with the disadvantages and advantages of both scenarios, because we all know that you got to start from somewhere, guys. And you know, it's not always where you could just have a 750 credit score as you wake up one day. So we know it takes work, we know it takes time, but here are the disadvantages and advantages of buying versus renting. So I'm gonna go through here and we're gonna talk about the advantages of buying a home. Now, the beautiful thing about buying a home, it's all in your hands. So we're assuming that you've already been approved, you got your down payment, you know, and typically you could get into a home with 0 to 5% down. 0 is going to be a very difficult situation since it's geographically kind of, the government allows us to utilize a USDA loan in certain areas, depending on the demographics. So the 0% thing is a real slim chance that you could qualify. But I know for a fact that most of you could qualify for your first time home to be an FHA loan, which would be about 3.5% down, and a conventional loan, which is about 5% down for those of you that qualify. And so the advantages of buying a home is that you kind of get to create your own canvas, right? So you could get into a build, or you could get into a home that's existing and you could pick the logistics of it. You have a little bit more freedom when you're buying to kind of choose what it is that you want in that purchase. You know, do you want to be in a certain area? Do you want to spend a certain amount? So it kind of gives you flexibility. And of course, you know, whenever you're going through the buying process, you could find a home that maybe needs a little bit more updating, so you know you can put some money into it, renovate it, and kind of get that equity up to where you make it a home that's feasible for you and your family. And the same thing that goes with building. You get to customize it from the ground up, and we do have those low down payment programs for you guys that are first time home buyers to even build. So that's definitely an advantage, is being able to have the flexibility and customization to be able to buy a home. And now, guys, even if you're getting the 3.5% down or 5% down program, it's considered a 1 to 4 residential single family home. So that means that you could buy up to 4 units, right? So it's one property, but say it has 4 units on it, meaning it has 4 2-bedroom, 1 baths. You could still qualify for a government loan with 3.5% down with that loan. So as you can see, that's a huge advantage, because you could live in one of them and rent out the other 3. And you talk about building equity, that's what I would advise most of you guys that are single, ladies too, single, no kids, not married. It's a great way to kind of get in. And even if you are married, guys, you know, I'm not, essentially saying that you can't do it if you're married. But the biggest thing is I know when you have a family, you typically want to be in an environment where you have a backyard, you have a little bit more space. So sometimes it's not the best fit for a family, just depending on the deal that you make. But it is a great option for those of you buying your first home to get into something where you're getting equity, you're getting your mortgage probably 80-90% paid for by your renters, and you're living practically for free. Now, you can't tell me that's not a great deal. Now, we talk about the equity portion of this thing is, so if you buy your first deal today, it's 4 units, 2 units, even a single family home that's only 1 unit, meaning 1 livable area for 1 family. The biggest thing that you want to know about this thing is that you're developing equity. So it could go 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, and you're developing equity. And people may ask, what is equity? Well, equity is the difference from the amount you owe to the amount that it's worth. So if you owe $100,000 and it's worth $150,000, you have $50,000 worth of equity. And to me, guys, that's a home run. So that's 2 advantages that I could tell you today about buying or building that will fall in your favor. And the last one here that we could talk about is essentially, whenever you talk about your living situation, you want to always have stability. And most of you guys that are renting are signing 6 months lease, 1 year lease, and so you're kind of like stable, but for that term, right? And so once that term is up, most likely your rent is probably going to go up by 10%. So if you're paying $1,000 today, the next year it's going to be $1,100. So there's always those staircases of you paying and not gaining any equity on the rental side. But when you do buy, that's essentially what you're going to be providing your family or those around you or yourself, the stability to know you got a home, and that you're developing the equity, and you're not having to worry about variable interest rates, because we'll get you into a fixed rate where your rate doesn't climb up over time. It just stays fixed from the day that you buy it. It stays fixed, or you could refinance at a later time and get that rate even lower. And so those are 3 advantages that I think that you guys should know about when you're considering buying or building a home with us here at Poteet Homes. Now, it all is sunshine and rainbows when I tell you that, but on the flip side, maybe there's a few disadvantages, right? And I can't really name a whole lot of them, but I'll give you a couple of them that you could take away from essentially buying a home. And we could kind of get started with the basics, right? And that is, you got to maintain the home, right? So you're going to have AC filters. You're going to have to cut your grass. You're going to have to change out toilets, as far as the sewer system, right? You may have to address that if there's some type of minor clog, right? Maybe the kids threw too much toilet paper. Well, that's going to be your responsibility in case it causes any issues. And maybe even as a renter, you may have to be responsible for some of those things. But as you could see, there is responsibility that comes with owning a home, and some of that could be considered a disadvantage, but more than likely is just more of a responsibility that you have in your home, is to maintain it and to make sure that everything is tidy throughout the duration that you're there. That way you can maintain the quality of the home to not really diminish, right? You want that home to stay in tip-top shape, so that way if you ever rent it because you move on to bigger, better things, it's ready to rent. You also may sell it in the future, and again, I can help you with that. And so those things come into play, but when you have a professional like me and the team here at Poteet Homes, we'll guide you on how to kind of execute on those situations. And another disadvantage that could come about could essentially be that maybe you feel that when you buy a home, you may be kind of not necessarily stuck, but maybe you bought in a location that you bought it for price, and it's on the southern side of town, or in a side of town that may not be something that from 3-4 years from now that you have kids, is a safe place for them. Because when you're single or whatnot, maybe it's a little easier for you to move in and out and not really worry about if your kids are walking the streets, because you don't have kids. So one of those things is you kind of could feel like you bought in a place and now you have to stay there. But I will tell you guys, even though to some that might be a con or a disadvantage, in reality that's a big plus too, because you could just now leave that, sell it, or just rent it and give it to somebody that was in your situation when you first bought that home. And essentially, guys, the biggest thing that I get people tell me about when they want to buy a home, or an objection, is they want to be financially free, and so they just elect to rent. And that kind of seems like that gives them that financial freedom to not be obligated to a loan. And to some, that to me could be a misconception, in my opinion, only for the fact that if you feel that you're kind of locked into something, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a burden. It just means you got to stay on your A game. You got to constantly be responsible, because if it is your first home, well, it's your first home. You hadn't ever paid mortgage before, so you do need to kind of adult up a little bit. And I know most of us, when we turned into an adult age, it was quite easy, or maybe it was harder than others or some. But at the end of the day, guys, we have to be adults about things, be responsible, because now as an adult, you're no longer dependent on your parents, and essentially you want to develop your own way of living. And so by doing that, I believe that if you believe that you are getting into a mortgage and you feel that it could be a burden, just contact us, guys, because we could tell you on how to alleviate that burden. If indeed fact you own a home even now and you're like, man, I'm stuck, just call us, man, because we may be able to refinance that thing and get in a lower rate. We may be able to sell it for you. Well, I know for sure I could sell it for you. And lastly, you could just rent it out and use it as passive income, and now that burden turns into a blessing. And that's essentially what we do here at Poteet Homes, is kind of navigate through the process for you when it comes to essentially buying a home, right? And so I want to dip into a little bit of renting a home, because it may be a fit for you guys as well, some of you out there. And I'll touch base on it just quite briefly, maybe on 1 or 2 points, really just to kind of give you a little bit detail on how renting works. And so one of the advantages that I would probably say that is something that I've seen from family members, specifically my brother, which I know he don't watch this podcast, so I could call him out a little bit. Nah, just kidding. Anyways, so some things that are cool about renting is people feel that it's flexible, because you could be maybe on the northern side of town for 3 months to 6 months, and then now you're on the east side of town, downtown, and you're able to relocate quite simply, quite easily, where you just call a mover's truck, you move on to the next rental, you put your deposit, and it's done. So if it is you that has that work environment where you have to constantly move, just like my brother, he's working virtual. He could go to Dallas and work over there. So he could, it's all working from home. So his home is the United States. So he can be in California one day, and he could 6 months later be in New York. Another 6 months later, he's in Texas again. And we're like, hey, brother, there you are. And it's just great for him. And I think for people like that, it's great because maybe he has a 401k or things that I'm not really savvy into that maybe is taking care of him for the future. But I'm thinking that more of the type of that being an advantage to most, or to some, it really could also be in a disadvantage, basically because you're not developing that equity. And that's all I wanted to mention there. But if it is you that needs that rental flexibility, that's a really good option for you. But I want to encourage you to still keep that in mind, that it is still good to buy. What if you're renting in 3-4 different places, but you still could buy a home in Texas that you're renting to someone else? Like, it doesn't mean that you got to stop the opportunity to buy, right? You still could use both to your advantage. The flexibility of relocating, the rent is developing equity because you bought a home just to kind of invest. And those are things, guys, that you need to stay on track to execute on if that is you. Now, another advantage that I would kind of throw out there, depending on your landlord, is lawn care or any type of maintenance of the home typically falls on the landlord. So you as a renter really could just pay rent and just really move on about your daily life and not worry about, hey, do I have to call the pest control guy? Maybe you do got to call him, the landlord, and let him know something's happening. But the financial burden of that is essentially put on the landlord most of the time, depending on your contract. So I'm not the contract expert on your deal specifically, but in most terms, the landlord's taking care of that. But your contract, if you are renting, you may need to look at it deeper. And if anything, maybe I'm giving you a tip to make sure those costs maybe are to the landlord instead of you. But 9 times out of 10, the landlord's going to put it on you as the person, not put it on you as the person living there, but as the owner, they're going to take care of that for you. So maintenance costs are definitely going to be down, and the flexibility is going to be a plus for you there. So moving on to kind of a disadvantage of renting, and I think we kind of touched base on this as I was discussing about buying, is, guys, you're renting and you're paying $1,000 every month. And if you do that 1 times 12, that's $12,000 that you pretty much can't ever get back. Now, maybe you got it back because you're in a great location and your life was happy, and that's how you got, the return of investment on that $12,000. But on a financial side of things, you're not developing any equity. You're not putting it into a place where you could eventually get it back through a cash out refinance or resell. So to me, that's a huge disadvantage, because I'm not the type to just throw money somewhere where I'm never getting it back. So I would highly want you guys to consider purchasing with someone like me. So that way you can start developing equity. Now, don't get me wrong, guys. I was a renter. I've rented for many years, but don't stay in that rut or don't stay in that trend too long, because you might be missing out opportunities for you to leave a legacy for your family. Now, a last disadvantage, in my opinion, about renting is that we talked about this again just about 3 or 4 minutes ago, but it's always going to happen at least 9 times out of 10. And I'm a landlord myself, and if I like you, I'm probably not going to do it, but if I like you, I still might do it. I really don't dislike a lot of people anyway. But the bottom line is, guys, a landlord is typically going to raise your rent after each contract is up. If you rented for a year and you paid $1,000, you're probably going to $1,100 or $1,200, because you know why? Uncle Sam and his taxes, they have to collect. So the taxes are going up, insurances are going up. So things over time, guys, go up. And I know that's a huge disadvantage to some, because it kind of could navigate you through moving from one place to another. But at the end of the day, guys, whatever space or whatever time frame you're in, me, Sonny Estrada here at Poteet Homes has your back 100%. Do not hesitate to reach out to us, because whether it's an advantage now, you could turn that advantage into a passive income advantage, right? Where you're developing equity, but now you've rented it out and you bought another home and you're just renting and repeating. So those are the beautiful things that come with it. But if you're a renter, that's still okay too, because you're getting your feet wet, you're getting used to making payments, you're making your payments on time, and you're developing being by yourself, whether it was you that just moved out of your parents' house and you just want to feel it. That is you. That's okay, because that was me at one time too. But you don't have to be there forever. Contact us today at Poteet Homes, 210-201-3570. DM us on Facebook. Please like, share, and subscribe, because without you guys following, sharing our content, we can't help others. And we're so grateful that you've done that already. And we're just asking you to do it 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 10 more times. Every time you see an episode, do the same thing, guys. It's always a pleasure having you here with us on this episode here at Poteet Homes of this podcast. And honestly, guys, we can't wait to see you again. So stay humble, stay blessed, and we'll see you on the next one. Peace.